Yes, thank you very much for joining us. We are the Believe in Brits podcast, back for year 3, and we are all back just in time for the start of NFL kickoff. Owain joins me today. Sean is currently over in the States. He's not due back until tomorrow, so we'll be back for next week, but he's currently stateside. Owain, good to have you on as usual. How you doing, mate?
Yeah, good.
Looking forward to tonight, or are we waiting until the morning?
Yeah, it's a bit late for me. If it's not a Browns game, I normally catch up on it tomorrow. And yeah, I think I'm going to try and stay off the social media and watch it in full tomorrow. Waste a few hours of the day.
Yeah, no, fair enough. I'm going to try and do my best, at least make it to half time. I'm pretty seasoned with it now, though, with all the Cleveland Guardians games. However, I have noticed myself sort of like falling to sleep at around the 5th inning, of which in NFL terms, that would put me in about the start of the 3rd quarter. So yeah, at least the first half is the aim. But it's just really good to be able to say that the NFL's back. It feels it's crazy how long ago it was since we were last talking about Browns football. That was the 2nd week in January when we were in Houston and reeling after the playoff loss. It's a good 8 months since then, 8-9 months since then, which feels like forever, but also doesn't feel like a long time at all, of which is the stupid thing. And a good thing from a Browns perspective, and we'll get onto this during today, is the fact that realistically, the reason as to why we've not been on all that much is that there's not been much to talk about. It's been a quite consistent, relatively quiet off season. For the Browns, it really has been a relatively quiet off season. Most of the stuff has been off the field, in the front offices. So as we look at the news, there's only really one bit of news in the last couple of weeks. Sort of outside of players hyping themselves up and all the rest of it. And that's the fact that Cleveland Browns Stadium's been renamed as Huntington Bank Stadium. Yeah, Huntington, for those of you that read it with a British inflection and think it should be pronounced Huntington. I've been reliably informed that apparently you miss out all the middle, and it's simply Huntington Bank Stadium. Obviously, a lot of money coming in. Owain for that. It's not been disclosed as to how much. I don't think that they do that sort of thing over there, where they tell us exactly how much money gets funneled into the club. But what was interesting to me with it, and we won't go into it too much, is that it's a deal that would see it continue in either its current stadium or in a future stadium. And also during the press conference, it turns out that Huntington Bank helped facilitate Columbus Crew's move to Lower.com Stadium. So, and that's actually where they set up their first meeting to talk about this sponsorship deal. So, interestingly, that could be a move towards the dome, of which I think that, you've talked about it at length, a dome makes too much sense.
Yeah, and the quicker it happens, the better.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, I feel like this is just another step towards that. It's the Haslams playing chess. Apparently, we'll hear more about that next week. Apparently, people were speculating that the press conference this week, which was about the stadium name change, might have been about their decision in terms of what to do going forward after the city and the county have both said, no, please reconsider downtown. But apparently they will make a statement next week. So eyes peeled for that one, I suppose. But we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about football, actual football. The Browns playing the Cowboys, 9:25 p.m. We are the later of the late games in the usual Sunday stretch. We are the America game of the week. We're on Sky Sports, of which means that for those of you who have DAZN NFL Game Pass, you will not be able to watch it on NFL Game Pass until I think it's 24 hours after. It's either 24 or 48 hours after where they'll release that. It's blacked out to Sky. But what we're not going to do on this podcast is go into the ins and outs of each of the game. We want to be talking around the game more and around the organization, around the Browns, rather than just looking into the ins and outs of each game. So we found ourselves repeating ourselves a lot, especially by like week 12, week 13. It was all relatively the same stuff. So we've said to ourselves we're going to do things differently this year. But before we do that, Owain, how do you feel about the and this will actually tee us up for what our main theme is today, but how do you feel going into Sunday against the Cowboys?
I don't know what to feel, to be honest. I think, like you said, it's going to build into what we're going to talk about here, but it's been really, really tough to gauge any sort of like excitement level and your level of optimism going into this season. I think we've all spoke on this podcast. Obviously, the last one we did, I think we did our predictions, and we were all quite bullish on that one. But I don't know, as time goes on, you sort of like maybe hear whispers about, let's face it, like the reason why I think my main feeling is apprehension. And the reason why is because you just haven't got a clue what you're going to get out of number 4. And until we see exactly what is going to come out of his performance on Sunday and over the first few weeks of the season, I think it's really hard to gauge where the Browns are going to be this season. And that makes it tough to have any sort of excitement levels, because if he comes out, drops a stinker on Sunday, I'm sure our podcast next week will have a totally different tone to what it's been, for a while, to be honest, because we have had a little bit of success over this period of time. We enjoyed last season massively, even though, it was very much ups and downs. It was fun to watch towards the end of the season, wasn't it? And
yeah, it was. There was almost an expectation that no matter what came through, we'd still get through it. And I don't think that as Browns fans we've had that.
Yeah, exactly. And not only that, it would be fun to watch as well. And I think, perhaps, with the Flacco thing, there was as much of you rooting for Flacco and his success, and the fact that it looked, it was visually exciting to watch, like whether he was throwing interceptions or a, 50-yard touchdown pass via, thread in the needle. It was exciting to watch. You were rooting for him. And now that we go back to the Watson era, I think there is a lot of apprehension. And because, if we're going to speak about it honestly, it's going into year 3 now of a contract. You can't really see them getting out of for another 2 seasons after this.
Yeah.
If this season doesn't go well, and if he doesn't play well this season, there's all sorts of things that could happen after this season. So I think as we get closer to Sunday, instead of that excitement building up, I've got probably more apprehension than I would like to have at this point. I don't know about you.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because on the one hand, our roster is one of the best rosters in the league. Our defense is one of, if not the best defense in the league. We've got, at last, a rather exciting wide receiver core. We have a firing tight end. We're waiting, obviously, for Nick Chubb to come back, and they're now saying, unfortunately, it's looking like week 8 rather than week 4. Which is a niggle in my side. But by the same token, Jerome Ford did a job last year. He still got 840 yards over the course of the season. That's not bad coming from your number 2. and then to have Nick Chubb come back and have what will be a revenge arc. I am very much looking forward to that Steelers game when I'm over there now, because that is Nick Chubb revenge game written all over it. That's I couldn't have pitched that any better. But we've got all those together. But like you say, it's going to come down to it's going to come down to 4, and I think that people are twigging onto that a bit more now, and that's maybe why there's a bit more of a milieu, for lack of a better word, around the Browns at the moment. A lot of people are silently bullish, I'd say, or silently skeptical. They're not really one way or the other, and it's because they know that the most of the games where Deshaun Watson's been involved, you've kind of hid behind the sofa a little bit. There was a question that came. It was either yesterday or the day before, where Deshaun Watson's had to come out with the line, "There is no doubt that there's still an elite QB in me." Yikes. Not really a question you're really wanting to have to field on the 4th of September with a game 3 days away. It's a lot when you look at it like that. So yeah, there is a lot. There's a lot there. I feel like I won't be crushed if we lose, even if we lost by a score or 2 on Sunday, because the Cowboys are a good team. They were 12-5 last year. I still think they're going to run the Eagles close in the NFC East this year as well. It's this is the sort of team where when we played them 4 years ago, it was a scalp to win. It definitely shouldn't be considered a foregone conclusion. I think we're the 2.5-point favorite going into Sunday. That alone is a win in my book. And maybe that's just the old fan in me that still can't believe that we have a winning team. But yeah, it's definitely a case of there is still a window there for us, and a lot of changes have been made to allow Deshaun Watson to be the quarterback that he wants to be, but he's going to have to show it. This is very much a prove it year, and the Browns pay enough cash. They might end up being happy to eat some dead cap at some point. It just depends as to what that would look like and if it's needed.
Yeah, and you are spot on. It's prove it year, and I think the thing that maybe is playing on my mind more than anything is that like you said, the roster's in such great shape at the minute, and this is what we've been building towards for ever since I was a fan. Because you go through those 0 and 16 years, you go through the 1 and 15 years with a view to them making decisions to put them in this position in 5-6 years' time, and now we're there. Now Myles Garrett's getting. I'm not saying he's getting older. Factually, he's probably at his peak now.
But yeah, our big pieces.
Yeah, our big pieces.
You look at Denzel Ward. Denzel Ward's probably only got about 3 concussions left in him.
I would say less than that. So
he's got a year.
Yeah. So yeah, you're looking at these pieces, these elite players that we have. Browns are one of the oldest rosters in the league now. So
Oof.
Yeah,
that makes sense. That makes sense because we don't draft, and a lot of
their average age is like over 27.
Yeah.
So this team is getting to the point where if you don't see results in the next season or 2, that slope may start to come down. Especially if Watson's the reason why. Because if he's not the reason why and he plays great, then that's fine. The organization's in a good spot going forward. They've got the quarterback. They can sort of mash everything else around. They'd be fine. But if he is the reason, and they have to go back to square one again with that, problems. So yeah, I don't want to start this podcast by being too doom and gloom because we're 2 days away from we're a couple of days away from the season starting.
Absolutely, but you've set up the theme quite nicely. I mean, we're pretty much already in it, so I might as well just sort of like unveil the unveil the box for everybody else. So the episode title is Great Expectations. Very much just looking at the expectations of the season. The fact that I don't know about the people that are listening in, but there just hasn't been a lot of hype. This is the first season in quite a few seasons where there just doesn't seem to be much of a I'm on Reddit, I'm on Twitter, I'm on all the other bits, and there isn't the same sort of like let's go sort of mentality when it comes to the Browns. Now I don't know if that's because people are potentially distracted by the Guardians. The Guards have been doing incredibly well, for example, and that's taken a lot of attention on the other side of the pond. I know that much for sure. But just sort of like around the lake, people have put us at 8.5 win total this year. They're expecting us to really middle out and to struggle with this new offensive strategy because it's against the norm. And the Athletic came out with a rather fantastic piece on whether or not fans are optimistic or pessimistic about the season. Cleveland are 5th most pessimistic on the year. Owain, 35.1% of fans are optimistic. 64.9% are pessimistic. Now, let me put that into perspective for you. Carolina fans are more optimistic about their year, about 38%. The team directly below us is New England at 24.7%. In fact, the only team that I think shouldn't be here as much as us is Dallas fans. 20% of Dallas fans are optimistic. I think that's just because of the fact that they seem to be constantly caught into a web of never actually making it. And maybe maybe their expectations are too high, and maybe that's the thing. Are we now in a case of, if we're not in a conversation for a Super Bowl, are we not satisfied anymore?
Well, there's a couple of things. So I've written down like a few things of why, in particular, the Browns fans are going to be pessimistic. I think one, because that's what we're used to. We're used to feeling let down. So that's one reason. The second reason is Watson. We've waited a long time for him. He's had his injuries, issues off the field. Let's face it, a lot of the fan base, including us, don't like the fact that he's playing for us in the first place.
Also fair.
Also, he's not played well. So trying to project that into him changing around his career arc with the Browns, that can take a lot of optimism to do that. And then I want to pick up on something you just said there in terms of expectations. You list Carolina, New England. They're probably going to be more optimistic than us, because what is a good season to them compared to us? If we miss the playoffs, that's a bad season, isn't it? Whereas if those two miss the playoffs, but QB1 looks good in both cases, then they're really happy and they come out of the season buzzing. Especially, Carolina at the moment, they're like really panicking over QB1 and what they gave up for him and all this stuff. If he starts playing well this season, then they miss out on the playoffs, but they think, oh, he's going to be good. He's good. He's proved it. That's a good season to them.
Yeah, I get that. I definitely get that. 100%. I definitely still say that even with everything at the moment, though, I'm more optimistic on us than I was, let's say, first year of Baker, or the times where we were, where we were bad and basically just looking for a few wins to keep us going.
Of course, because this roster's in, like you said, this roster is one of the best in the NFL. There's no doubt about that. You go position by position, you go offense, defense. It is a really, really good roster. But the fact is that it's only going to go as far as the quarterback goes. And that's why people are going to be pessimistic. That's why I'm worried I'm still optimistic about this team and how good it is. But yeah, especially like the noise in camp didn't sound amazing. We haven't spoke since actually that last preseason game, and the messaging around that week worried me personally because I
around
read
him
into
missing the game.
Yeah, I read into it that Kevin Stefanski really wanted him to play and get live reps in that, and then you sort of day by day saw that Watson was saying stuff like, "This is the first I'm hearing about playing on Sunday," or "I'm not sure if
I
I'm playing on
remember that.
Sunday."
Yeah.
And the disconnect between those messages set alarm bells off for me, really, because to me, it sounded like Stefanski's pushing for him to play, and Watson doesn't like that O-line, and he's not going to go near it. And you look now, and like the O-line's not much different to what it was. Like the debate in between playing Hudson at left tackle or Jack Conklin, it's not the greatest situation in the world either, to be playing a right tackle coming off a catastrophic knee injury at left tackle, or James Hudson, who stinks. So like you look at that, and it does worry me a bit, like where Watson's mindset's going to be, and they're not going to have they're going to have a tough test in terms of pass rush on Sunday. So
yes, Micah Parsons is not exactly one that you want a troubled O-line proposition to have. Have heard that Jedrick Wills should be dressing on Sunday. Not necessarily that he'll be starting, but that he'll be dressing.
He's already said he's not starting, I think, hasn't he?
Yeah. So I think that you might see Conklin on the left and DeJuan Jones on the right. Jones has actually expressed an interest in playing left tackle, long term as well. So I think that might be an interesting storyline to watch out for as well. I mean, to be honest, I Deshaun Watson, that's for a different day. I feel like we're getting down a too pessimistic track here, but I feel like Watson needs about 6 seconds in the pocket whenever he passes, and that's obviously not what you should be doing as an NFL quarterback. But let's hope for an improvement on Sunday at the very least. I tell you what, let's change the tack. Let's still keeping with expectations. What are your expectations for the Browns this season?
I think we went through our predictions. I expected them, and I think I said that they were going to win the division. I still expect them to.
But is that an expectation?
Yeah, I do still expect them to do that, because I think the roster is better than anything else in our division. I think the others are maybe over-egging what they've added in the summer. I don't think either of, I say either because the Steelers, I think, probably finish bottom. So I'm counting the Bengals and the Ravens as the others. And I don't think
I just felt the cool chill of Mike Tomlin just walk past me then. Don't
worry. But yeah, I think our roster is the best in the division, and I have to be optimistic that we're going to see at least average play out of Watson this year. And I think if they do get average play out of Watson this year, they will go and win the division. You saw Flacco get all those wins. Flacco's not elite. Flacco's barely.
And a lot of what he did was
just
standard quarterback play. Yeah. How many times have we said? Yeah. How many times have we said on this podcast, if we can get average or slightly above average quarterback play, we will win way more than we lose, and the defense will do that for us. I expect the defense to keep us on as well. And the reason they fell down in December and January, is that they were burnt out because they're constantly on the field, because we're constantly turning the ball over. We had a -10, I think it was. It was either -10 or -12 turnover differential. You can't do that and expect to win games in January. And that comes down to your offense being all over the shop, which of course it was going to be, but we still won a ridiculous number of games when you consider when you consider all of that. So how can you not be optimistic at that?
Yeah, and like I said, Flacco gave us average last year, and that made our team look really good. I think Watson gives us average this year; it'll make our team really good. And you have to hope that he's got more than average in his bag. Like, they didn't spend 3 first-round picks and 250 million for average. You've got to hope that he's got more than average still left in his locker, and he seems to think he's got it. So let's see.
Yeah. I feel like this was going to be a lot more fluffy and airy when I first pitched it, and now I think that we've sort of convinced ourselves that this is essentially just a prove it moment. Like, if we get the Watson that played the second half of that Baltimore Ravens game, if we get the broken shoulder Deshaun Watson, we go deep in January. Because I watched it back the other night, and it was awesome. Just the way in which all the passes were where they needed to be. He was trusting his protection. He wasn't delaying himself in the pocket. He was hurrying up his own timing. He was getting it out into the flats. That's what you need. And the kind of offense that they're looking to install is doing that. So, I want to trust the process. I was going to go very American then with trust the process. And allow this to work, because surely it can work. So, so to answer it on my end, in terms of my expectations, I don't have an expectation that we'll win the division, simply because we don't win the division, and I'm sick of expecting it and hoping for it. So, a playoff spot, at the very least, a playoff spot. I expect the 5th seed, if I'm honest. I expect to give the Ravens a run for their money. And I expect a win in January. I think that I think that we underachieved last year because of all the stuff that was going on around it. That defense did not deserve to go out in the wild card round. That defense didn't deserve to have to go on the road in the wild card round. It's mad the way that it ended up when you consider, just how elite that unit was, and just how good those that were able to dress on the other side of the ball were able to just keep it together and get more than the other side. Because at some point we were trotting out just anybody. So and that's the sort of thing of which people need to remember, and the pundits need to remember as well. People are talking about us as if we just didn't do anything last year on the offensive side of the ball, and it was just business as usual. It was not business as usual. We won games despite being on our deathbed. So yeah, my expectations are lofty. I'm in the optimistic camp. I'm definitely in the lower third of that athletic one. I find us in a very similar position to Buffalo in a sense, in that the window is closing. We need to do, we need to act now, essentially. And if not, we need to consider what we do next. I think that Buffalo are in a very similar camp to us in that regards, in the AFC at least. And to be honest with you, I'm looking at this hope-o-meter as hope-o-meter. How terrible is that for a name? That the Athletic have given it. And Buffalo are only a few places above us, but they do have 60% optimism. God, that really jumps. It goes from 60.7% with Buffalo to 41.8% in Minnesota. There is there's no middle ground there. It suddenly just jumps. But yeah, I'd put us in the Buffalo camp, and I feel like our fans should be more optimistic as a result. But I think that what you say is very true. Browns being Browns, has that effect.
Yeah, definitely.
So that's pretty much everything for this week. Before we go, Owain, give us a score prediction, will you, for Cleveland Dallas, based on the absolutely zero preview that we actually gave the game.
This is tough. 24-21 Browns.
I've got the exact same. Actually, no, I've got 24-20. Actually, I've got field goals instead of touchdowns for Dallas being part of the equation. So thank you everyone for listening in. Thank you, Owain, for jumping on, and also thank you to Sean for tuning in from Florida. Turns out that he was able to find himself a brief moment whilst he's over there. I'm just hoping he's not stuck in an airport somewhere, but listening to it. So thanks everyone. We'll be back next week, in the week where we'll obviously react to the Cowboys game, and we'll also set up week 2. I've forgotten who we play week 2 now. It's completely escaped my mind. Owain, can you remember off the top of your head?
I cannot. That's how locked in I am this week.
It's a Jags. I did think it was the Jags. Yeah, we go on the road to Jacksonville. I can see that you've just put in the chat here, Owain, about a pick'em league. The NFL UK is not doing a pick'em league this year. I've been keeping an eye on it, and they've just not renewed it as yet. So unfortunately, there is not such a one there. However, if we do come up with something before Sunday, because I think Sleeper have some pick'em leagues now, keep your eyes peeled on Twitter and Facebook, and we'll see what we can sort out there. But the UK site has stopped doing it for whatever reason, which is disappointing. Maybe they're waiting until Sunday as well, although that would seem unwise. Also, for anyone that is looking for a place to watch the game on Sunday, obviously with the Sky Blackout, Sean and I will be at Felson's Birmingham. It's moved from Box Birmingham to Felson's Birmingham, still on Broad Street in Birmingham, for the full 10 yards kickoff party, where they will be having all the Sky games on. Hopefully we'll have a few of the zone ones on beforehand as well, but we're just awaiting confirmation there. So head on over to full10yards.co.uk for more information about that, or just go to their Twitter page, Full 10 Yards, for more information on that, or just rock up. We'll be there from about 5-6 o'clock down there, and just look for the guy in glasses wearing probably a Chubb or a Garrett jersey, and that'll be me. So hope to see some of you there that are listening in. So until next week, Owain, thank you very much, bud. Thank you to everyone listening. We've been the Believe in Brits podcast. Keep believing.
Wow, what a struggle. The way it should be, I guess.